London, summer 1994. The elegant auction room at Sotheby's hummed with anticipation, crystal chandeliers casting soft light over the assembled crowd of collectors, musicians, and entertainment moguls. The event had attracted unusual attention, not just for the extraordinary items from rock history being offered, but because of rumors circulating through the industry about two particular bidders with interest in the day's crown jewel: Elvis Presley's custom Gibson guitar, used during his legendary '68 comeback special. Valued at £2 million, the instrument represented more than mere memorabilia. It symbolized a pivotal moment in music history when the king reclaimed his throne after years of Hollywood detours and commercial decline. For serious collectors, this wasn't just an auction, but an opportunity to possess physical connection to a watershed moment in American cultural evolution. The catalog description detailed the instrument's provenance with reverent precision. The custom modifications Elvis had requested, the distinctive wear patterns from his energetic performance, the handwritten notes about tuning and song selection still visible on the inside of the case. Museum curators had already approached Sotheby's expressing institutional interest, but as with most significant music artifacts, private collectors typically outbid public institutions, their financial resources unmatched by budget-constrained museums regardless of arguments about cultural preservation and public access. If this story of competition, unexpected connection, and the true meaning of musical legacy moves you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from music history. Near the back of the room, partially obscured by security personnel positioned to minimize attention, Michael Jackson sat with uncharacteristic stillness. At 36, he occupied complicated cultural territory, his commercial dominance unquestioned, yet his personal life increasingly subject to speculation and scrutiny. His interest in Elvis transcended typical fan appreciation. Since purchasing the ATV catalog containing numerous Presley hits, Michael had developed deeper connection to the artist, whose journey from revolutionary force to isolated icon paralleled his own trajectory in uncomfortable ways he rarely discussed publicly, but contemplated privately with increasing frequency. Michael's collection of historical artifacts had already achieved legendary status within the industry. From the Elephant Man's bones to Hollywood memorabilia that preserved moments of cinematic innovation, he studied with scholarly appreciation despite lacking formal education. But his interest in Elvis's guitar stemmed from something more personal than acquisition impulse. In the '68 comeback special, Elvis had reclaimed authentic artistic voice after years of commercial compromise, a journey Michael found increasingly relevant as he navigated his own mid-career transition following the unprecedented success of Thriller and the increasing isolation that accompanied his singular cultural position. Across the room, equally protected by carefully positioned entourage, Prince surveyed the proceedings with the particular intensity that characterized his public appearances. Though more overtly demonstrating his appreciation for Jimi Hendrix and James Brown, Prince had studied Elvis with musician's analytical eye, recognizing how Presley had synthesized black musical traditions in a package mainstream America could embrace, a complicated legacy Prince both critiqued and respected for its cultural significance despite its problematic dimensions. For Prince, Elvis represented study in contradictions, undeniable musical talent inseparable from the racial dynamics that had enabled his mainstream success while original black artists remained marginalized. As a musician who had fought relentlessly for creative control throughout his career, who had changed his name to unpronounceable symbol in ongoing battle with Warner Brothers over artistic autonomy, Prince approached Elvis's legacy with mixture of professional respect and critical distance, acknowledging technical brilliance while questioning the systems that had elevated white performer adopting black musical traditions above the originators of those same innovations. The media had constructed narrative around their supposed competition for the guitar before either had confirmed genuine interest. Another chapter in the manufactured rivalry between artists whose musical approaches differed dramatically, but who shared experience of navigating unprecedented fame while attempting to maintain artistic authenticity beyond commercial expectations. What journalists couldn't know, What neither artist had publicly articulated was how their interest in this particular artifact stemmed from parallel recognition of Elvis's significance as cautionary tale as much as artistic inspiration. This constructed rivalry had begun years earlier, built more on industry gossip and superficial contrasts than genuine antagonism. Michael's mainstream popularity versus Prince's edgier approach. Michael's careful public image versus Prince's provocative presentation. Michael's meticulous production versus Prince's raw energy. Music journalists, seeking narrative framework for understanding two revolutionary talents emerging simultaneously, had found convenient storyline in supposed competition that simplified their distinct artistic approaches into artificial opposition rather than parallel innovations expanding popular music's possibilities from different directions. Around the auction room, industry insiders exchanged knowing glances as they noted both artists' presence, anticipating dramatic confrontation that would generate headlines and reinforce established narrative of opposition rather than connection. The auctioneer, veteran of high-profile sales involving entertainment figures, maintained professional demeanor while recognizing the additional electricity their attendance brought to already significant auction. The potential for bidding war that would drive final price far beyond initial valuation while creating perfect story for entertainment news cycle perpetually hungry for celebrity conflict. As the auction proceeded through preliminary items, as anticipation built toward the headline offering, a Sotheby's representative approached Michael discreetly. "Mr. Jackson, there's a message for you," he said with practiced neutrality that revealed nothing of its content. Michael accepted the folded note with slight nod, his expression unchanged as he read the unexpected communication. Across the room, Prince received similar delivery. His reaction equally contained, though those nearest him noted subtle shift in his posture. The almost imperceptible straightening that suggested information requiring immediate recalibration of expectations or intentions. We'd love to hear your thoughts about musical artifacts and memorabilia. What piece of music history would you most treasure owning, and what would it mean to you personally? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When the auctioneer finally introduced Elvis's guitar, when the murmur of anticipation rippled through the assembled collectors, the opening bid of £500,000 immediately jumped to £1 million with mechanical efficiency. The preliminary negotiation handled through representatives rather than direct participation. The real competition would begin at threshold that eliminated casual interest, establishing serious contenders for genuine piece of music history rather than merely expensive collectible. The room's energy intensified as bidding continued. Representatives for Japanese technology mogul, American hedge fund manager known for trophy acquisitions, an anonymous telephone bidder, each driving price upward with practiced nonchalance that barely concealed the competitive spirit underneath. Journalists positioned strategically throughout the room shifted attention between the auction's official progression and the two musical icons whose involvement had been anticipated but not yet materialized, their continued restraint creating tension beyond the financial escalation happening at the front of the room. What happened next defied the expected narrative of celebrity competition. As bidding reached £1.5 million, as the rhythm of escalating offers suggested approaching conclusion, both Michael and Prince remained silent, neither participating in auction that had supposedly drawn them to London specifically. The puzzled auctioneer maintained professional composure while extending time for final bids, his experienced eye noting the unexpected restraint from collectors rumored to have particular interest in this signature item. As the hammer prepared to fall, as the guitar approached acquisition by anonymous telephone bidder from Nashville, Michael finally stood, not to offer competing bid, but to exit quietly through side door, acknowledgement almost imperceptible to anyone not specifically watching. Across the room, Prince made similarly discreet departure, timing suggesting coordination rather than coincidence. Their simultaneous withdrawal creating momentary ripple of confusion among journalists who had anticipated dramatic confrontation rather than parallel abstention. Outside Sotheby's, in quiet courtyard sheltered from London's perpetual drizzle by elegant glass canopy, Michael found Prince waiting. Unexpected proximity, creating momentary awkwardness between artists whose relationship existed more through media construction than genuine interaction. For several seconds, they simply acknowledged each other with slight nods. The particular recognition shared by those navigating similar territory from different directions, understanding experience few others could genuinely comprehend regardless of wealth or fame. "Your note," Michael finally said, his speaking voice carrying characteristic softness that always contrasted with his performance energy. About Elvis's guitar being artifact of caution rather than inspiration. That it belongs in museum instead of private collection. I felt the same way. Prince nodded slightly, his response reflecting characteristic economy with words that defined his public interactions. Some legacies need public accessibility, not private ownership, especially ones with complicated truths about music's evolution across racial boundaries. The conversation that followed, brief by ordinary standards but unprecedented in their carefully separated professional orbits, touched on shared recognition rarely articulated publicly. How Elvis represented not just artistic inspiration, but warning about fame's isolation, about industry's commodification of revolutionary expression into marketable product, about cultural appropriation's complicated legacy when genuine artistic appreciation becomes inseparable from systemic exploitation. "I've been thinking a lot about what happens to the things we create," Michael said after a moment of contemplative silence. "About who controls the narrative, about whether our music ends up artifacts behind glass or living force continuing to evolve." The observation carried weight beyond its specific reference to Elvis's guitar, touching deeper concerns about artistic legacy both artists contemplated with increasing frequency as they navigated mid-career transitions after unprecedented early success. "They'd write about us competing for it," Prince observed with subtle headshake that acknowledged media's persistent simplification of their parallel careers in a manufactured rivalry. Never understanding it's not about possession. It's about preservation of truth, complicated, messy truth about how music actually evolves, about who influences whom, about systems that determine whose contributions get centered and whose get marginalized. Michael's response revealed unusual candor rarely displayed in public settings, personal vulnerability typically reserved for private reflection. "I look at Elvis's journey and see warning as much as inspiration. The isolation, the yes men, the distance from authentic creative sources that originally inspired him. I felt that happening." He paused, perhaps reconsidering degree of openness with artists he knew primarily through media construction rather than genuine interaction. "It's getting harder to hear my own voice sometimes, through all the noise around me." Prince's expression shifted subtly, momentary glimpse of recognition behind the carefully maintained mystique that characterized his public persona. "Different noise, same challenge," he said with uncharacteristic directness. "They want product, not evolution. Marketable image, not artistic growth." He gestured vaguely toward the auction house behind them. "That guitar represents a moment when Elvis briefly broke free from all that, reconnected with his authentic voice. That's why it matters. Not as memorabilia, but as testament to possibility of artistic reclamation, even within system designed for commercial exploitation rather than creative truth." Their conversation lasted perhaps 15 minutes. Nothing approaching friendship, but genuine interaction beyond constructed rivalry, recognition of parallel journeys navigating territory few others could genuinely comprehend. When they finally parted, their handshake carried acknowledgement that transcended competition, understanding that beneath media narratives and marketing categories existed shared experience of attempting to maintain artistic authenticity while navigating fame's distorting pressures, of creating revolutionary expression within industry structured to contain rather than amplify genuine innovation. "I hope whoever got it understands what they're actually acquiring," Michael said as final observation before they returned to their separate worlds, to the carefully maintained distance that had characterized their parallel careers despite occupying same cultural moment from different artistic directions. 3 days later, London's Victoria and Albert Museum announced anonymous donation funding acquisition of Elvis Presley's guitar for permanent public exhibition, ensuring artifact would remain accessible rather than disappearing into private collection. The press release emphasized instrument's significance in understanding popular music's evolution through complex racial and cultural dynamics of mid-20th century America. Language suggesting donor, with nuanced appreciation of Elvis's complicated legacy beyond simplistic idol worship or revisionist dismissal. The acquisition created particular stir within music archival community, as public institutions rarely secured such significant artifacts against competition from private collectors with virtually unlimited financial resources. Museum curators noted unusual structure of donation, not direct purchase, but establishment of acquisition funds specifically designating the Elvis guitar as cornerstone of expanded permanent exhibition examining popular music's evolution through complex interaction of diverse cultural traditions, with particular attention to questions of influence, appropriation, and attribution often oversimplified in conventional historical narratives. Though neither Michael nor Prince ever publicly acknowledged their conversation or potential involvement in the museum acquisition, those who witnessed their unexpected interaction outside Sotheby's recognized significance beyond apparent coincidence. Moment when manufactured rivalry yielded briefly to authentic recognition of shared understanding about fame's complicated legacy, about responsibility to musical tradition transcending personal ownership or competitive positioning. An industry structured to promote opposition rather than connection. Their brief interaction suggested possibility that beneath constructed narratives existed genuine recognition of parallel journeys, navigating similar territory from different stylistic directions, but with shared understanding of responsibility to musical legacy beyond personal acquisition or competitive positioning. Over subsequent years, music journalists occasionally referenced the auction as famous competition that never happened. The anticipated bidding war between iconic artists that dissolved into unexpected anticlimax when neither participated despite industry rumors suggesting intense mutual interest in Elvis's guitar. Few publications explored deeper questions raised by their parallel abstention and near-simultaneous departure, whether coincidence or coordination, whether simple disinterest or more complex shared recognition about appropriate preservation of cultural artifacts with significance beyond private possession or investment potential. The Victoria and Albert exhibition eventually expanded beyond Elvis's guitar to include comprehensive examination of popular music's evolution through complex cultural exchange, explicit acknowledgement of Black musical traditions that influenced Elvis alongside recognition of his genuine artistic contributions within their appropriate historical context. Museum visitors frequently commented on exhibition's unusual depth and nuance, its willingness to engage complicated questions about appropriation and attribution often absent from simplistic popular narratives about rock history's development across racial and cultural boundaries. If this story has touched you, if it has offered perspective on how artists sometimes transcend media narratives to recognize deeper connections beyond manufactured rivalry, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who might appreciate this glimpse behind the headlines to moment of genuine recognition between two revolutionary forces in American popular music. Moment when competition gave way to shared understanding about responsibility to musical tradition beyond personal ownership or media-constructed opposition. Years later, visitors to the Victoria and Albert Museum who paused before Elvis's guitar, who contemplate its significance in popular music's complicated evolution, rarely know the backstory of its acquisition. The brief, unexpected conversation between two artists, often positioned as rivals who momentarily set aside constructed opposition to ensure cultural artifact, remained accessible to future generations rather than disappearing into private collection. Perhaps this absence of public credit represents most genuine aspect of the gesture. Recognition that some contributions to cultural preservation matter more for their impact than for acknowledgement. That responsibility to musical tradition sometimes manifests through ensuring access rather than ownership, through preservation rather than possession. For both Michael and Prince, whose later years would bring increasing isolation through different but parallel circumstances, Michael through escalating public scrutiny and legal challenges, Prince through intensifying battle for creative autonomy against industry structures. That brief London interaction represented a rare moment of genuine connection beyond the manufactured narratives that increasingly defined their public perception. Though never developing into friendship or collaboration, their shared recognition about Elvis's complicated legacy, both inspiring and cautionary, reflected deeper understanding of artistic responsibility that transcended the simplistic competition narrative journalism consistently imposed upon their distinct but equally revolutionary contributions to popular music's evolution. In music industry that profits from constructing rivalries rather than recognizing complementary innovations, their momentary connection outside Sotheby's offered glimpse of more nuanced reality. That beneath public personas and marketing categories existed human beings navigating unprecedented fame while attempting to maintain artistic integrity, each recognizing in the other's journey parallel challenges despite stylistic differences, each understanding Elvis's guitar as symbol of both possibility and warning about creative authenticity within commercial systems structured to commodify rather than nurture genuine artistic evolution.